Reconciling our books is an incredibly important process. It allows us to confirm what is being recorded in our QuickBooks or other accounting software with what has actually happened on our bank statement. And this might sound like kind of a no-brainer or like it's common sense, but really this is where we end up catching errors. Sometimes there are duplicated transactions, sometimes transactions are missing, and sometimes the tools that we have at our disposal, like bank feeds, like the accounts receivable and payable processes with some automation built in, can actually kind of complicate our lives. So let's talk about how we can actually address these items in the reconciliation screen before we save that reconciliation. So let's say that I just got the statement for June of 2026 and I want to go in and reconcile my checking account. In order to do that, I would go to, if you have it bookmarked, it might be over here. Otherwise, if you go to accounting right here, reconciliation will be under the accounting menu. Okay, so we'll click reconcile right here. We want to select the correct account from the drop-down menu. Now I am planning to reconcile my business checking account, so I will leave that as is. I want to confirm that my last statement ending date is what I expect it to be, and I want to confirm that my beginning balance matches what's showing on my statement. Once I have done those things, I am free to enter the statement ending balance and statement ending date. So for this particular account, for the month of June, my statement ending balance was $148,468.37. Now we would want to also put in the statement ending date. Now remember, most financial institutions for checking and savings accounts do run on a month-to-month cycle. So the statement ending date is often going to be the 30th or 31st of the month. But some financial institutions, including a lot of smaller financial institutions, will sometimes close the statement a day or two early if it happens to coincide with a weekend day or holiday. So don't forget that. Sometimes it might be the 28th or 29th instead of the 30th or 31st. So we want to enter the statement ending date, and for me it is June 30th. You can enter the 4-digit date code and hit tab, and then QuickBooks will fill in the rest of the information for you. So it filled in all the slashes as well as 2026 for me. Now this only works if you're doing anything in the current year. If you're doing it for a different year, so say I was trying to reconcile an account for 2025, I would have had to put in 063025 in order for it to fill in the correct year. From here, I can go ahead and start reconciling. Now, something that we always want to watch for when we are reconciling our accounts is that all of the transactions here in this summary are being marked off. Okay, now we can see here the very first transaction is actually a check that has not yet cleared. Okay, that is possibly perfectly natural and normal depending on A, how long ago the check was written, and B, whether or not the check has already been sent or whether or not it happened to be sent close to the end of a month. Okay, so for example, if I had cut a check on June 28th and dropped it in the mail, it might be perfectly reasonable that that check hasn't yet cleared since we're still in early July. But this check here is actually an example of a check that might have become stale at this point that we might want to remove from the books. I will actually be going over that process in the next video, but I wanted to actually show you a slightly different issue that you might run into in QuickBooks in the reconciliation screen and how to fix it. So let's go ahead and scroll down. Now, one of the things that I want to be looking for in my reconciliation screen whenever I'm doing reconciliation is that everything is marked and that we have our little green boxes next to items. Okay, that tells me that it came through the bank feed. Now we can see here there are a couple different types of green boxes that we might see. This one with the little plus means that a rule was applied that automatically adds that transaction from my bank feed to my books. Okay, this little green box with just the one little line behind it and no plus sign means that I manually approved that transaction in my bank transactions tab and brought it into my register. Okay, so we're going through, everything looks fine, all of the transactions are marked off, and everything has little green boxes next to it, which is exactly what I would hope to see. until we get down to this transaction. Okay, now this is an instance where we are seeing two transactions for the same dollar amount on the same day and to the same person, okay? One has the little green box next to it, one does not. One has been checked and is being included in this reconciliation summary. The other one is not. So that is something that I would want to pause and address before I reconcile my account. This is exactly the type of thing we are trying to catch when we are going through the reconciliation process, okay? So something that I would want to confirm here is I see one of these transactions came through accounts receivable and the other was just automatically allocated to bookkeeping services. Now, what this tells me is that the transaction that came through my bank transactions tab likely should have been matched with this payment that was already recorded in QuickBooks, but it wasn't. Okay, and this does happen. Sometimes if we're just going through and adding transactions, we don't always stop to record a payment before we do. And sometimes things just kind of get missed, kind of lost in translation, right? This is why it is so critically important to walk through all of the steps of this process. We want to check our accounts payable and accounts receivable aging reports as and before we are adding things from our bank transactions tab. Then we want to go through our reconciliation screen and truly look line by line at what is happening and make sure that everything is marked off and that if it isn't, there is a reason why, okay? This one, there really is no reason for it not to be joined together, right? This is where we're catching errors. Everything should be checked off unless we can point to it very specifically and say why, like we can with this check right here, right? We can say safely that this check was written and recorded in QuickBooks, but it was not cashed. Now, we don't necessarily know the reason that it wasn't cashed. We just know that it has not yet cleared our bank. And that is completely fine, right? Maybe it got lost in the mail. Maybe there's something else at play, but we're not going to worry about that for the time being. We are going to focus on this transaction that we can fix before we reconcile our account, okay? Now, if I were to go ahead and reconcile as is right now, we can see the difference is 0. There is nothing stopping me from doing that. But if I do that, it's going to create additional cleanup down the road, okay? As of right now, I haven't reconciled yet. I could match up these two transactions and then I could move forward, which is exactly what I would like to do in an ideal world. So what I'm going to do in order to match these two transactions up is I'm actually going to, instead of hitting finish now, I'm going to say save for later, okay? Now, before we go into our bank transactions tab and fix this, I want to show you what's actually happening on our reports and how this particular instance is actually causing some of our income to be doubled, okay? So if I go over here to reports and then standard reports and then go into my profit and loss and look, let's go ahead and go into bookkeeping services here and see if there is a duplicate transaction for Brian Chen for that amount. So if I go in here and I'm going to have to scroll down to the bottom here, I see here is that deposit from Brian Chen on June 19th for $2,450. And then just a couple lines up, actually, I see right here, this invoice from Brian Chen, also for that amount, is being counted as income, which means that income has been put onto my reports twice. It is showing up twice when it should only be coming through once, okay? This is where if we're not slowing down and matching in our bank transactions tab when we should be, we can actually be duplicating our income and expenses. So let's go ahead and head back over to the bank transactions tab so that we can resolve this and get this showing up as it should be, okay? So if I go over to the bank transactions tab here, and again, I have that bookmarked, but if you didn't, you would just want to click on accounting in the home screen and then bank transactions is the first item to come up. I would want to go into my business checking account and then into my posted transactions, okay? Now, something I want to advise caution on is that you don't want to be bringing transactions back if there's a chance they have already been reconciled, Okay, you only want to undo or recall transactions if you know for sure they have not yet been reconciled in your checking account or credit card register. But I know, because I haven't yet reconciled for June, that I am safe to call back as many of these June transactions as I would like. In fact, I could select all of them and bring them back into my bank feed if I wanted to sift through and classify them again. Okay. But since I don't want to do that, I want to find just this one transaction that I'm looking for. I'm going to go and find here on 6/19, I have a deposit from Brian Chen that was classified to bookkeeping services. Okay, now we can see here that does look a little bit different than some of the other transactions we have here, right? For example, we can see that some of the transactions have rules associated with them. If we scroll down, we might see that something has been matched instead of classified. And in this case, we see it's actually been matched to multiple transactions. So we see this has not been matched in any way, shape, or form. It has just been classified to bookkeeping services. Since that is the case, I'm actually going to click undo right here on the side, and that is going to take this transaction from the posted section in my bank register or my bank feed to my pending transactions tab. Okay. Now, since I recalled it and since there was a deposit there, we can see QuickBooks is offering this up as a match. Now, sometimes QuickBooks just isn't great about advising matches, which is why it's really important to slow down and confirm that things are happening the way they should in your reconciliation screen. Just because it gets to 0 doesn't necessarily mean that that's exactly how we would want to save things, okay? So I can see this matches up, the dates match up, the client matches up. I know that this was a payment for this invoice, so I'm going to go ahead and match this transaction. Now, let's go ahead and go back into our reconciliation screen and see what's changed. So if I go to my bank register here, we can actually click reconcile right here in the upper right-hand corner, or we can always click reconcile under accounting as well. Now you can see it did save my information since I opted to save that for later. So I can hit resume reconciling. Okay, now nothing has changed here for all intents and purposes, right? The difference is still 0. We still have a stale transaction here. The cleared balance is still the same. All that is still the same. But let's go ahead and scroll down now and just confirm, sure enough, we no longer have 2 transactions there for $2,450 on June 19th. Okay, which is exactly what we want to see. We don't want to see duplicated transactions like that. Now, for the final step, let's go ahead and look at our reports again and see what they're telling us. So again, I'll go into standard reports here. I'll go to the profit and loss. And first things first, we can already see our bookkeeping services income has come down by that $2,450 amount. So if I click in here, and then we're going to scroll down, I can see that I now only have 1 transaction for $2,450. I don't have that second deposit on June 19th, okay, because I told QuickBooks that those 2 transactions were linked. And since this is an accrual basis report, it is going to recognize the income as of the date of the invoice, regardless of when I received the cash, okay? So this is why it is so important to slow down as we are reconciling, to make sure that we're actually scrolling down through that screen, even if we get to a 0 difference, because there can be things there that are causing issues and holding up our reconciliation. And ultimately, those errors can be flowing through onto our profit and loss and balance sheet reports, which we definitely don't want to see. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Holly from Accrual Mistress Bookkeeping and Consulting. If you have any questions, please do leave those in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.